It is unacceptable that they use their power to keep us voiceless. Those that have gone before us say no more.
For an actor, words are the gift. You know, in life, you don't get to speak words that are necessarily as beautiful as, say, Shakespeare. And, you know, in playing someone like Dr. King, in particular, you get to use some pretty incredible words and to say things that are so deeply meaningful. The world knows him as an orator, and, you know, of course, that's a part of what we try to do with the film. So that part of it was a gift, but also, you know, for me, it was as much about the words as it was about the silences. You know, who is this man when he's alone? Who is this man when he's in a state of doubt, in a state of guilt, in a state of feeling weak? So it was the juxtaposition of the words and the silences that really were the challenge and the joy for me to depict.
The cell is probably bugged. It probably is.
But one of the things that really helped me with playing Dr. King was the fact that I'm not American. You know, the fact that I didn't grow up with the deification of him. I didn't grow up particularly learning about him. Of course, I knew who he was, but that helped me to approach him as a man as opposed to a historical figure, which I think it would be a far less interesting approach. You know, what I think is necessary is to have something that's revelatory, and so I approached him as a man because I didn't really think of him as a historical figure first.
And the legacy of slavery in this country in particular is still unfolding in appalling ways. In terms of, you know, what's been happening with Ferguson in particular, how do you think this movie is going to play with people? And do you think, you know, do you think the legacy of slavery will ever be shaken off here?
Well, as you say, the legacy of slavery is still very much with us, not least when you look at the disproportionate amount of black men incarcerated in this country, over 50%. You go to some of these jails that have hard labor as part of what's going on, and it looks like a plantation, you know, from the slave days. But I think that one of the things that I'm hopeful that people get from this film is the fact that, as you say, things haven't changed enough. I mean, brilliant things have happened. We do live in a country here in America where there is a black president. We live in a country where Ava DuVernay, as a black director, was able to make this film, and Oprah Winfrey, as an incredibly powerful individual, was there to enable it to happen.
In the South, there have been thousands of racially motivated murders.
The 50th anniversary of the events we show in the film will be next March. In 2015, and to have Oprah depict someone who wasn't allowed to register to vote, who was manhandled and assaulted by police, I think illustrates how far we've come, but also how ridiculous it is that only 50 years ago she would be treated in that way.
White, black, and otherwise. Come to Selma.
I heard about the attack of innocent people. I couldn't just stand by.
What happens when a man stands up, says enough is enough?
But, you know, for instance, last year, the Voting Rights Act was eroded on the basis that the country has changed enough that we don't need to have things in place to make sure that people are marginalized at the voting booths. Well, I think that, you know, if you watch Selma, you can see that Ferguson shows that things haven't changed as much as they should. And so voting and civil disobedience are still necessitous, which is, you know, civil disobedience is unfortunate that it's still necessitous, and voting, of course, is absolutely necessary.
This revolution goes on.